It's 5 p.m. on a Monday afternoon, and Chris Anderson is wrapping up a day at work. He's spent the day looking down at a computer screen, but now he's ready to turn his gaze upwards and look out into the night sky.
Alright, I'll catch you Wednesday. See ya. I think it's a very primal thing to actually look up into the sky and just look up, and everybody's got an interest in it. It's surprising that even if somebody's not nerdy or geeky, you just point out a few things to them in the sky and they're actually interested. And that's the same with my family. My grandfather used to point things out, and to my mum particularly, who was his daughter-in-law, and she remembers things like that. And I go out, I take my telescope up to my parents' place. They live on the central coast where it's nice and dark and you can see all the sky in its grandeur, and I point things out to my parents, and despite the fact that they're not really nerdy people as such, they really enjoy going out and having a look. And I think a lot of people do. It's surprisingly popular when you start showing people that they're actually interested in the sky.
Amateur astronomy isn't Chris's only hobby. He plays piano, writes books, and even starred in the SBS television series Nerds FC.
There's my 15 minutes of fame. I was so not comfortable in front of cameras, but with the help of the 14 guys in the team and the crew, it sort of helped me get through that, and became a bit more comfortable with cameras after 3 months of being in front of them.
Chris's passion for astronomy grew around the time of his 30th birthday.
When I first became really into it was actually only in the last few years. As a kid, I always had an interest in astronomy, and my parents keep recounting how when Halley's Comet came over, I was 7 years old and I'd always be reciting facts and, you know, Halley Comet this, Halley's Comet that. And I've always had an interest in it, and over the last few years I decided to get into it more heavily. For my 30th birthday I decided that I really wanted to learn more about astronomy, so I decided to go and buy a telescope and actually, find out more about the hobby. And as part of that, my investigations, I joined the Northern Sydney Astronomical Society, and they basically helped me get set up, and actually I got a telescope from one of the members, and they've really helped teach me all about astronomy over the last couple of years.
Tonight, Chris offers to show us around the night sky with a little bit of help from an iPhone application. Unfortunately, for it to be dark enough to see the sky, it isn't light enough for our camera to see Chris.
So as you can see over here in the eastern sky, we've got Saturn, which is one of my favourite objects to look at in the night sky. The rings are just fantastic, and it's one of the first things that I saw through a telescope. Was in Canberra back when I was about 15, and every time I see the rings it just takes my breath away. One of my favourite objects, and probably another one of my favourite objects is actually just over here near the Southern Cross. It's called Omega Centauri, and it's part of the Centaurus constellation, and the Centaurus constellation is just around the Southern Cross. So if you look for the Southern Cross, everyone in the Southern Hemisphere is fairly familiar with that. Centaurus is just around it, and Omega Centauri is a globular cluster, and it's just one of my favourite objects, apart from Saturn, to see in the sky. Well, I love, especially on public transport, sitting near a window and just looking up at the stars and just thinking about it. And I remember several times that one particular trip coming back from Canberra, and it was during the time of a lunar eclipse, and just watching that go across the sky, sitting in the passenger seat, watching that go across. And it does make you think about your place in the universe, and it sometimes can be a bit scary when you think of the vast distances involved. But within my limited abilities, I do tend to dream a bit.
On the central coast of New South Wales, there lives a man whose passion for astronomy grew so strong that one day he decided to move away from the city so he could better pursue his hobby.
It's high up. You need to be above the mists. You need to be as high as you can be. It's reasonably far from town, so the sky is reasonably dark. It's not perfect by any means, but it's pretty good. You can't have everything, the great observatories of the world are on the western side of continents, up mountains. Apart from Hawaii, you have to be really high up to get away from all the mists and the clag, lower down. This isn't perfect, but it's bloody good for what, for the standard I'm at. But I'll just sort of show you the technology.
When nighttime comes, Joss puts down his paintbrush and wheels out of his shed some of his impressive handmade telescopes. This one here is a 22-inch Dobsonian telescope using the system of mirrors developed by Sir Isaac Newton.
Okay, so the light, this amount of light comes through here, down onto the mirror at the back, which you can see, and the mirror bends the light and focuses it on a flat piece of glass here, right, which is behind this, and then that, which is called the diagonal, is at 45 degrees, flicks the light out to the side, and then you put various eyepieces in here. So it's really very simple. This motion, you see, swiveling around at the bottom and up and down on plastic, was developed by this guy, John Dobson, and it's terribly simple. I mean, it works really well because it's a very smooth motion. And the whole point of all this is actually looking at a nebula or something like that. If you look at Orion, which is over there at night, you see these stars burning through the gas fields. And it's really a very sort of ethereal thing. It's all very well looking at it on a computer, but it's rather like, do you want to see a postcard of what it looks like from the top of Everest, or actually be up there? They're two totally different things.
But remaining inside Joss's shed is another telescope which we don't trouble him to set up. It is 36 inches in diameter, probably the largest privately owned telescope in the whole of Australia and possibly the Southern Hemisphere. It is 5 or 6 times brighter than the Sydney Observatory telescope, which is only 16 inches. It's so powerful it could see a 20-cent coin 42 kilometres away, and when extended it's so tall that you need to climb this ladder to look into the eyepiece.
This is a 36-inch disc of Pyrex, 2 inches thick, 50 mil thick, resting on 27 points, and each point of this thing bears the same amount of weight, and that's really pretty damn difficult to work out. Then these points are driven in and out by these motors, but you can imagine this piece of glass is so accurate that the edge cools faster than the middle because there's more surface area. So you cool the middle of the glass, otherwise the glass bends, And then there's a fan, a series of fans there, which blow air over the surface of the mirror to clean to stop the miraging effect of air, warm air, a layer of warm air on the surface of the mirror. So it's all quite, quite over the top. I personally do it from a point of view of I just love looking at the stuff. It's really so beautiful, and it's these very soft shapes, and you see the individual stars. You just got to climb Everest. You can't go on climbing the hills outside Wollongong. And so this is just, it's just something you've got to do. My children reckon it's as boring as batshit. Dull as all hell. Yes, it is to some people. Some people don't want to drive a race car. Some people, are happy with golf. So it's just got this. It's this outer world experience, I think. And it's the people who do it come from all walks of life. It's not a rich man's sport. It tends to be extremely exacting. You can get bloody cold. And it can be, pretty, like tonight, cloud. Why? So yes, it can be, pissing off that the stuff, you have good nights and you have bad nights.
Most of the amateur community, of course, are not doing serious research, but they're doing a great job in just sort of spreading the word to the public. And that's part of what professional astronomers do as well, but there are a lot more amateurs out there. Astronomy is really quite unique in having this sort of community of amateur astronomers out there sitting alongside the professionals, and our collective job is to tell people about the universe. We have a list of astronomical societies in Australia, and without going and checking, there are probably 50. Right, there are no other sciences out there that you could claim to have 50 local societies, working in the same field. So, credible advantage for astronomy. Some of the more committed amateurs make discoveries. There was a case last year of an impact of a comet onto Jupiter, or into the atmosphere of Jupiter, and we first saw this back in, I think, 1994, where it leaves a dark mark in the clouds of Jupiter. And that one was predicted beforehand, and so all the professionals were out there watching it, as with all the amateurs. But last year, this local Australian amateur saw one of these dark marks, and so discovered it and alerted the professional community.
This is the shed where that discovery took place. And this is the amateur who made it, Anthony Wesley, arguably Australia's most famous amateur astronomer.
The 19th of July 2009, I'd been photographing Jupiter from about 10 o'clock at night, and by the time it got to midnight, I was really photographing the Great Red Spot on Jupiter, and that was visible from about 10 o'clock at night through to just after midnight. And by the time midnight came around, it was the middle of winter, as you can imagine. 19th of July in Australia, it was freezing cold. I'd pretty much had enough for the night and was just about going to turn everything off, pack up and come back up to the house. And also that night the cricket was on. One of the Ashes tests was going on over in England. We weren't doing very well in that one. And also the final round of the British Open golf was happening, and that was really exciting as well. So there were all these things that were tempting me to come back up to the house. But for whatever reason, I decided I'd just take a break for half an hour, come up to the house, have a hot drink, have a look at how the golf was going, and then I'd go back down and keep going. So after that, I go back down to the observatory at about 12:30, and I can see this black spot on Jupiter that's just rotating around into view. It's just coming around on the day side of Jupiter. And after a while, photographing this, taking pictures through different filters, I realised that this is something really unusual. This black spot, normally when you see a black spot on Jupiter, it's the shadow of one of Jupiter's 4 moons, or it's or it's something quite normal. But this one was in the wrong place to be a shadow. This was down near the South Pole, and all of Jupiter's moons were up around the equator, so it couldn't be that. And it was definitely something that wasn't there the last time I'd looked at this side of Jupiter, just 2 days before. So I got really excited and and then tried to work out whether I should I keep on recording, or should I just stop recording and come up to the house and start sending emails to the professional and other amateurs that I've got contact with, just to let them know that something exciting seems to be happening on Jupiter. In the end, I decided to keep recording for just another hour or so. So I recorded more information and just kept on trying to get good pictures of this for the next hour or so. And then by 2 o'clock, or just after 2 o'clock in the morning, I came back up to the house and just started sending emails to everybody I could think of that might be interested. And luckily, because it was 2 o'clock in the morning here, it was during the day still over in England, and it wasn't too late at night in California, and I started getting responses very quickly. Within a couple of hours, the news started to get around to all of the amateur astronomers and around to the professional community that it looked like Jupiter had been hit by an asteroid, which was really quite remarkable.
This was only the second time in history an impact on Jupiter had been recorded. The first was in 1994, and even then it was assumed that this was a once-in-a-thousand-year event. Although the black spot on Jupiter can seem insignificant to the astronomical layman, in reality it was the size of planet Earth, and that is why, to say the least, Anthony Wesley's overnight rise in fame was astronomical.
Well, I don't know. My experience is that there are lots and lots of people out there who want to look through a telescope. They want to see Jupiter they want to see Saturn through a telescope, right? So, and they get this enormous buzz out of seeing that, yes, there's this tiny image that you can see in the eyepiece, but hey, there's the ring. You can actually see the rings of Saturn through a telescope. And it's a difficult to understand, but absolutely true observation that is much more powerful for most people than seeing the picture on a computer screen or seeing the book or whatever. Just the act of looking through the eyepiece and seeing it right there in front of you really captures people's imagination, particularly young kids, of course. And so that's something, if you get the chance to do it, go and give it a go.